Hello.
Hi, everybody. My name is Cayetano Ferrer.
Oh, I heard it. Sound.
Okay, good. I'm gonna, well, I guess I'll leave people in the waiting room.
Hi, Jody.
So Rebecca, I'll go through the first few slides, and then when it gets to the art, I'll kind of give the, like overview of the project, and then turn it over to Cayetano's presentation, and then to you, and then back to me.
Sounds good.
We have 5 people waiting. I'm gonna make them wait.
We've practiced this show a lot, so we're prepared.
I've just been in a total different mode all day doing the dockless scooters, which are coming tomorrow.
Oh, okay. Pretty.
I'll let Kehoe in. Hi, John. We just have staff in here and Jody, our consultant.
Okay.
Hi, Rebecca. It's
Hi,
John.
How are you?
All right. Hi, Rachel.
Hi, John. We'll get started in just a few minutes and let people in. We have 9 people in the waiting room. I'll let Oscar in.
Good.
Rebecca, do you think we should read the letters we received into the record for this meeting? Or just take them to council?
Just the one letter?
Yeah, sorry, just the one.
I don't know that we want to read the whole letter, but I can certainly state that he's written in to support the project. Sure.
Okay. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and admit people and then we'll still hold on 2 minutes. Oh, Andrew Campbell.
Hi, everybody.
Good
Hi.
evening.
Hi.
Hi.
Minute.
Hey, Manny, how are you?
Good. Hey, Oscar.
What's going on?
Oh, this and that.
Nice to see you, Richard.
Hey,
Hi,
Oscar.
Leslie, how are you?
Good to hear you.
Good to hear from you.
Rachel, your logo is backwards. I don't know how that happened, but maybe you have it on mirror mode or something like that.
How about now?
Still
Nope.
backwards.
Still.
No.
Here.
How's my logo? Is my logo?
Yours is fine, yeah.
Yours is fine, John.
Straight before. There we go. Now
No volume. Can't hear.
Sorry.
I'm seeing it straight.
And that's wrong if you see it straight.
Yeah, I was gonna say, we don't see things straight.
Yeah, it's right here, babe.
Bev.
How do you get to chat? Participants.
I don't think they have a chat, Joel, on this
I have
one.
no volume. What am I doing wrong?
Where's the other?
Stop video. More.
Is my logo still backwards?
Yep.
Not much I'm gonna do now. Unfortunately, this is what's happening. Yeah, that's what's gonna happen because I cannot fix it.
Rachel. Did you look at your mirroring option where it says mirroring?
Thank you, Manny. I did.
We've had issues with this in the
Yes.
past.
Well, we know where you are. We know who you are. We know that it's West Hollywood. It's okay.
Unfortunately, this is what I can go ahead and do. We'll go ahead and do that for me.
Yay, that's much better.
That's fine. We're
San
bridging the
Francisco.
community. So thank you so much. If everyone could go ahead and mute yourselves while we have a presentation for the evening. We're going to have a presentation portion and then go ahead and hear from the artist, Cayetano Ferrer, as well as Rebecca Amen, our arts manager. So thank you so much for joining us this evening. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and we can start talking about the Melrose Norwich Gathering Space. And if anyone hears from anyone else, if they're having issues getting into the Zoom, just let me know. You can raise your hand. I'm also the host, so I'm trying to admit people as we go. Just bear with me. Let's It's a bit of an endless stream. Let's just give it another minute while people are joining. Okay. Well, thank you all again for joining us. We have quite a large group, which I really appreciate all of your time, particularly this evening. Tonight we are speaking about the Norwich Gathering Place, and this project seem to be having difficulties. Sorry, it's not at the beginning of the presentation. Wow, we have all the technical difficulties today. Thank you. Okay, so Melrose Gathering Place, this is part of a larger project, the Design District Streetscape Master Plan implementation. And there's quite a number of steps that are happening to make this entire project come to fruition. As you can see on the map, the phase 1 is shown in etched behind the blue, and we're undergrounding the utilities on Almont and Lapeer, as well as Melrose west of San Vicente to the city limits. And that's actually starting this August with our partner SCE, as well as the city working on that undergrounding. Following that, we will start the actual streetscape implementation on Melrose east of San Vicente to the city limits. So as you can see in yellow, that's phase 2, and that will actually start in January of 2022 and likely take the duration of 2022, culminating in the construction of the gathering space at Melrose and Norwich. Following that, we'll actually do the streetscape on the rest of Melrose, as well as Almont, Lapeer, and Robertson north of Melrose and south of Santa Monica Boulevard. followed by undergrounding all of the utilities on the southern portion of Robertson, as well as all of Beverly, and then completing the streetscape for those locations, and followed by a gathering space being created at Bonner and Beverly at Robertson. And so as part of the Design District Streetscape Master Plan implementation, one of the things that we've been working on more recently is updating the benches and trash receptacles. And City Council just actually signed off on this at their last meeting. So I did want to provide you with these final choices that you'll see throughout the district. And they'll also be included in the gathering space itself. This gives you a bit of the schedule that I already went over, so we can just skip ahead. So a little bit of history of the Design District Streetscape Master Plan. Most of you have been involved in this process for quite some time, so we're happy to have you. Started with the Avenues Working Group convening in 2012, with a master plan adopted in 2013 for the entire Design District Streetscape project. So that included changes to the sidewalk to be more pedestrian friendly, changes to the street to be more bicycle and vehicle friendly as well, frankly, to address parking issues, to change all of the street furniture, landscaping, lighting, et cetera, to recreate the entire district feel, but also to match what's there today. And so an addendum was adopted in 2014 for the gathering spaces themselves. And this is where there was a large portion of that community-based process where there were 10 meetings with the community. And the city identified 3 spaces. Like I said, the 2 actual gathering spaces, one on Beverly, one on Melrose. And then also Robertson North was identified as for the street itself to be used as kind of a festival street. So we're really testing that out right now with the Out on Robertson program. And that's something that we're looking at solidifying as a permanent feature of Robertson on certain or all weekends, with the use of some actual security features that can close the street. So specific to Norwich Gathering Space, when we worked with the community, ultimately the plan that was adopted to accommodate passive uses such as reading, relaxing, conversing. It wasn't a space meant to accommodate public events. So this space really wasn't designed to accommodate large gatherings or any city-sponsored events necessarily. We wanted to maintain the visibility and access for the businesses. This was really important because we have a number of businesses along this project. We also have 2 driveways that cut through this project as well to gain access to their parking in the rear. And so, safety is a key feature of that too. We wanted to make sure that there was maintenance of an east-west pathway for business access. The community and the plan identified seating, both sculptural and natural, to be included in the project. There was to be a water feature, minimal stream element, potentially adjacent to the parking. Paving should be natural and permeable. There was a goal to have a lot of lighting, particularly for security, but also as a sculptural element potentially. There was a goal for a double row of trees for shade, which is included. Drought tolerant planting, which is super important to the city in general for our environmental goals. A sculpture, other public art. And part of that piece was that it would be integrated into the project as a whole, which is something that's a little bit different than what we've seen in the past in our projects. Typically, we will have art on rotation in some of our public spaces. Having art really woven into the fabric of this design is really something different, and is what is occurring for both this project and the other gathering space at Bonner that we'll be presenting to the community in the future. And then a directory or wayfinding element, which is definitely part of our, public spaces, and specifically no restaurant dining. There are no restaurants proposed for the new building that's being constructed right now, but regardless, it wasn't necessarily meant to be a place to be commercialized, but rather a place of respite from the urban environment in order for people to have a break. So there were a number of meetings that occurred. In July 2019, the ACAC, Art and Cultural Affairs Commission, approved the artist selection who is Cayetano Ferrer, and we'll hear from him in just a minute. And then also in 2019, the working group, Design District Streetscape Master Plan Working Group, that has been created, including residents, business owners, and property owners. They selected a number of details and key elements to maintain from the plan. As you saw, there were so many items that we wanted to include in this project. Ultimately, we couldn't have all of them. It's a very small space. It's just over 1,000 square feet. And so ultimately, one key element that the working group wanted to eliminate was the stream feature. There's, and you'll hear in a few minutes, a number of utility issues on this site. So having water running through the site, or even the ability to add kind of a drainage type ditch, wasn't really something that we could do in a meaningful way. So ultimately they had decided that they didn't want to include that feature, but everything else was maintained. Ultimately in January of 2020, ACAC approved the concept art plan, which is the basis for what you'll see this evening. At that point in January 2020, there was a community meeting at the library to get input on the project. And that's the last time we heard from the general public. So we're really happy to have you today to discuss this project and hear from you. In July of 2020, ACAC approved the final art plan. And in June 2021, we had another design district working group meeting to check in with the working group as well. And that was last week. And so ultimately, after the council meeting that didn't quite happen in June, we wanted to have this meeting in order to check in with the community. As you can see, the art has been approved. And so our Arts and Cultural Affairs Commission has approved the design of the art itself. But there are definitely elements of the plan that are outside of that, and we want to hear from you. And we want to hear from you regardless and hear what you have to say. But I just want to be clear that the art is approved and that there's limitations on what we can do in terms of changing that. But there are certainly other aspects of the project that I think, there's still plenty of opportunity to provide input, and we really want to hear what you have to say and ultimately present that to the council when we go back to them at a special meeting. And let me make sure I'm saying the date correctly, because it is a special day. And that is on Wednesday, July 21st. So that's going to be the second meeting of council in July. It's a special meeting, Wednesday, July 21st. So this is the site today. As you can see, there's diagonal parking. There's 3 buildings with 2 driveways between them that intersects the site. And diagonal parking will ultimately be eliminated with the expansion of the sidewalk and will turn into parallel parking. And then the gathering space will be constructed as the streetscape gets completed on this end of Melrose. So I'll show you the renderings that we have, and then I'll turn it to the artist himself so that you can hear a little bit about these designs. This is a rendering of the site looking east at the corner of Melrose and Norwich. And now looking west towards Norwich. A view of the site from across the street and at night. And so I'm going to stop this presentation and actually switch it over to a video so you can get a presentation from the artist, and then we'll move on to Rebecca Amen.
Hi, everybody. My name is Cayetano Ferrer. I'm leading the artistic component of the West Hollywood Meeting Place project. And I'm going to go over a brief overview of that side of the project. And I just wanted to start by thanking everybody on the team for helping get this to the point that it is. It's been a lot of hard work over the course of well over a year and a half now. And I apologize for not being able to be there today. I had a prior commitment. So hopefully this will answer most of your questions. So I just want to start by going over a really brief overview of some past work that kind of leads into this, just to give a bit of context, and then to give a basic idea of why this project here in this location, in this point in time, it's a very site-specific project, and I just want to also kind of give some background in terms of where it comes from in terms of the threads of my work. So two threads in some past work that I would maybe point at are a sort of idea of thinking about preservation and restoration practices in museum spaces. That's something I've been working on over the past 5 or 6 years. So this piece is, for instance, there's a kind of architectural fragment that I've then kind of completed in this sort of fantastical restoration process with different materials and different forms that kind of mimic the shape of the original form. And then another thread, and that's, kind of, there's a lot of examples of that type of work. I'm not going to go through too many. Another thread of my work is sort of interest in thematic architecture of the kind of, particularly in the American West. So things like Disneyland or Hollywood set design or, Las Vegas architecture, for instance. So these are all things that are kind of, I would think of them as almost two separate threads in terms of my own interests and my own research that are kind of colliding with this project. And to understand that, I just thought I'd briefly kind of show some images of the type of form that the end result of the space is sort of referencing. So I'm considering the project as almost like a folly ruin of LA architecture. And a folly ruin, in case you're not familiar, is a sort of fake ruin this was a sort of form that was popularized in the 1700s and 1800s in Europe, where almost like period architecture, castles or other types of ruins would be built in a kind of garden to give the space a sense of history, but a kind of history that never existed, which I think is sort of interesting and funny. A couple of features of folly ruins that could be interesting to think about in relation to this project is that they're often kind of a transplant of a location from a different location to a setting that it shouldn't really be in. So you have sort of Roman ruins in, here's one, I guess, in Jamaica near the beach. And there's another feature is that it often, some of the earlier ones were a mix of actual fragments, and I wouldn't be able to pull up an example, but actual fragments that were sort of gathered at another location and sort of fabricated fragments. This idea is a mixture of a kind of like synthetic and authentic material from another architectural space. So I'm sure everybody's aware of the big demolition of LACMA that happened over the course of last summer. Where I got interested in this building, I was actually kind of working on a project at LACMA in around 2015, 2016, scanning a series of architectural fragments that were in their collection as a part of another project. And it was around this time that I found out that the building that I was actually doing these scans in would eventually be demolished. And I thought, wouldn't it be interesting to sort of reverse this kind of framework of collecting and sort of examining and sort of thinking about the history of a building through its fragments. And in terms of that reversal being sort of like an artist taking a piece of the architecture and then sort of eventually that idea would turn into this idea of kind of committing it for a public space or public use. And so that's where the ideas for this project kind of emerge. Let's see where I'm at. So these are just some initial sketches out of context, and I'll just point out that some of the images in this particular slideshow are slightly outdated, but it's important to kind of point out some features, some of the kind of technical aspects of what's happening. So this slide in particular, I wanted to point out, and the locations of the artwork have not been settled at the time that I'd made this, but this points out some of the restrictions that we're working with. So all the red areas are restrictions in terms of utilities underneath. So it does really very much, the plan had to be guided to an extent of the areas where we could actually place the artworks. The amount of flexibility when we're placing the work is sort of limited by that. And I also want to point out that ground material design, which you see here, one is a kind of exposed aggregate rough material, and the other is this kind of more refined terrazzo interior. And that's divided by, so this is, a kind of a footprint of the actual building itself, of LACMA, where these objects came from. And the idea for doing that is to sort of like, again, kind of transplant this idea of a ruin and use the actual, one-to-one footprint of the original building in a way that really falls quite neatly into the space that we have to work with. So there's going to be some edges that feel kind of like they're not very reconciled with, with the walkway. They kind of end at rough moments, and there's maybe some kind of crack work, and you'll see that in some later slides. But I just wanted to point out that kind of feature of the project, that there's this almost like a transplant happening. And then so there are kind of tiles that are embedded that are almost, the faux versions of the columns themselves. It's kind of an outline of them that'll be like a kind of flat material that one can easily roll or walk over. And then there's a bit of a kind of the sense of a wall there, and that will have like a slight bit of texture on it. And these are a few renderings things are not precisely placed, but they're 90% where they are in the final plan. And I might skip over, there's quite a lot here. And then here's the final layout, and it includes some rough ideas of the kind of crack work, but that's going to have to be done in place. So let's see what else we have to show. And then I'll show you some images of the process itself, which is where I really see, the kind of core of the gesture, the kind of artistic gesture happening is in this process of, this kind of massive engineering feat that we had to accomplish in order to get these objects safely removed from the building. So this was done over the course of the early period of the demolition with the assistance of the actual team that was demolishing the building. And we had to rent these massive cranes to get this happen. And so this is very much, I think part of the eventual, the sort of mythology of the work. I basically put the demolition on hold for a period of time in order to sort of salvage these objects, and in order to kind of, give the public some aspect of this like architecture that could be sort of held on to for a period of time. There's some pieces laid out on the site, and so yeah, you get an idea. I was asked to address some of the in terms of maintenance and the sort of future of this project moving forward after installation. And I'll just go over that briefly. Basically, I think the initial presentation will make an attempt to kind of keep within the spirit of kind of conservation and have, you know, whatever surface texture kind of refinishing be as minimal or as kind of the least intervention as possible. But I also understand the, you know, future, you know, certain evolutions might need to take place over the course of many years. And in terms of the collaborative spirit of the project, I think that those things can sort of come as needed. I just wanted to put that out there as a clarification in terms of the boundaries of the artwork. I don't really see it necessarily as a kind of fixed, never changing object that I think would probably be the preconditions for many the artwork of, you know, many other artists. Like a sculptor, you would never like repaint the surface of it. But in this situation, because it has to do with collective custodianship of these objects, I think that there is the potential for that to be a conversation moving forward. That being said, I'm working with a conservator to work on, you know, the sort of the best sort of surface finish. Basically have to kind of peel off all the paint and refinish with an initial material that will be, you know, stand the test of time and have a good surface quality. So yeah, I think that's about it. There's probably a lot more that we could discuss there.
There is. So we'll actually move on to the rest of the presentation. Thank you to Cayetano for that. And I'll actually turn it over to Rebecca Amen. Thank you.
Thanks, Rachel. As Rachel mentioned, my name is Rebecca Eman. I'm the acting arts manager for the city of West Hollywood. I'm pleased to be able to share this project with you, which we are very thrilled to welcome into our urban art collection. So this first slide here is just kind of gives you a breakdown of all of the layers in the piece called Extraction. Starting at the bottom, you'll see the underground utilities, which really set the stage and defined our limitations within the space. And as a reminder, as Rachel mentioned, it's between 900 and 1,000 square feet. So it's a very modest space that we're working with. The next layer is the landscaping that will be interlaid. And then there's a series of art elements. So there's the elements that have been extracted from the LACMA building itself. There are some specific ground plane materials selected, a terrazzo, really rich experience, and an aggregated concrete. So it'll have a different sound when people walk on it. And then there's a series of these inlaid pavers and this dividing wall, which Cayetano has provided some additional details about that, so I can show you some images. So here is the final site plan of how Cayetano envisions the space and how the Arts Commission has received it. And you'll see how he is essentially mimicking the entrance of the old Pereira building here on the site. And as you recall, he's creating a folly ruin, which is a mythical place that is created just for us, utilizing real pieces. And so you can get a sense of the materials here. And so what will happen is when you enter this space, you will recognize that you are in someplace unique. You will recognize that this exists nowhere else. This only exists in West Hollywood. It is a one-of-a-kind place. Here are some really nice details that Cayetano was loosely referencing about where the start and stop of the sidewalk is hard to define. And there will be some kind of what will appear to be raw edges around the edge of the gathering space, and where edges meet next to right-of-way places. And that's all very intentional. Again, really reinforcing this notion of a folly ruin, reinforcing the notion of the integration of the art element within the overall design district gathering space. Of course, we considered lighting here, and here's a site plan. The differences that you'll notice in this site plan from the last time that it was presented to the community is the vast addition of landscaping. So Cayetano and city staff really heard the community the last time. The design team heard the community that there was too much concrete in the original concept design, and that the community really pushed back and said, we need more greenscaping. We need, we want this space to feel like a lush garden, which is where the design team in coordination with Cayetano has taken it. So it was this kind of delicate dance around how to maintain the integrity of the design of the overall space, incorporate the desires of the community of incorporating all of the landscaping, and then also really like loading out the whole space with trees, as many trees as possible, which Rachel will sure mention. The lighting, as Rachel also mentioned, is intentional. So there's uplighting at night, there's lighting on the art elements. It will be very well lit at night. And the last thing I wanted to touch on was the funding for the project. So the artwork was originally budgeted within the overall design district streetscape master plan project. There was a specific allocation for the art component. The artist in their design development and in the kind of identification of the direction that they wanted to go, recognized that the budget would exceed what was originally allocated. So what the Arts Commission did is they were very supportive of the design direction. They're very supportive of the project. They have requested for council to designate funding from the Public Art and Beautification Fund to also be allocated towards this project to make sure that ends meet. That Public Art and Beautification Fund is totally different than the general fund. It is a fund that is specifically set aside for projects just like this. It is a fund that is set aside from private development projects who elect not to put art on site, and they pay an in lieu fee in order to meet their urban art requirement. And so the city holds that fund to pay for temporary public art projects, and on occasion to pay for permanent public art acquisitions like this one. So it is a very rare moment in our city. We don't do this very often. The last time we actually went through a process of commissioning a permanent piece of art was with the West Hollywood Park project. So that was 2013. It's been quite a while. So we're all a little bit rusty in the process and sometimes forget all of the ways. But this has gone through, as Rachel mentioned, the Urban Art Subcommittee review, as well as the Arts and Cultural Affairs Commission review for approval.
Thanks, Rebecca. I wanted to additionally show you a little bit more about the landscaping. You know, this was something that we really heard from the community, that they wanted as much landscaping as possible to create a lush space that feels like you're kind of discovering this folly. You know, the renderings don't do it justice. What we're planning on doing is increasing the planting size and increasing the maturity of the plants that we're planting, so that we're starting with a kind of the typical 5-year plan versus a typical first-year planting. So we anticipate that a lot of these plants will be much larger, and we'll also look to plant larger and more mature species of trees. We are including the same palette that we're using on the rest of Melrose. And so I did want to talk a little bit about that. There's 3 trees that are going to be on Melrose rotating along the street: the pink flowering tababuya, the Chinese pistache, and the London plane tree. The pink tababuya and the Chinese pistache are more small to medium trees, whereas the London plane is a larger tree, and those will alternate. And as you've heard before, there were so many limitations on this site, it was really impossible for us to fit any more trees. So what you're seeing is the most trees that we could put on this site based on our utility limitations. I mean, that was really the biggest difficulty, was those utilities. So we put as many trees as we could to create not only the double row that we had discussed previously, but in some cases, the feeling of you have a triple row of trees at the center of the project. So you really do shade this project from the street quite a bit. And once you're inside, that you'll feel among a number of trees in each of these kind of 3 individual rooms. And then the selected plant palette is a Mediterranean palette. I'll show you a zoomed in picture in just a moment. But again, I wanted to show you kind of the key features being that we have these 3 spaces, all with art, as well as seating. We anticipate that people will use this art in different ways. We're allowing them to come up and experience it. They could sit on it or sit around it. But we also have individual seats for people to sit down and be able to sit and read or eat in the space. These are the benches that were originally chosen for this space, but ultimately we will be using the benches for the design district adjacent to the space, and some of these adjacent to the art, so that we have that transparency that the Art and Cultural Affairs Commission wanted when you're surrounding these art pieces. The lighting will match the rest of the lighting in the design district, which are these Rama, both pedestrian and vehicular poles on the street. So all of those will match. We'll have lower 12-foot pedestrian lighting throughout the space, as well as uplighting in a warm light, so that it doesn't have a blue tone, but rather white, to uplight the art and trees. As was discussed before, we have this primary terrazzo slate colored base with selected exposed aggregate. And so you'll really feel, I like to liken this to museums or theater entrances in Los Angeles that have been preserved. And so you'll really have a feeling that you're in a very special place, with the outline of the perceived wall of the building, followed by the pillars outside on the ground. And this shows you those embedded cast concrete column footprints. Again, just more details on the ground plane. So not only are the pieces of LACMA that were extracted included as art, but these footprints as well. And this gives you another view of the space, again, showing how that tree canopy is really covering as much as we could surrounding the space. And truly, we provided green space wherever we had the ability, again, within the limitations of a lot of the utilities directly below. This is that plant selection that I spoke of. It's a Mediterranean plant palette. These plants, some of which have some color, but we really wanted an overall green concept of Mediterranean plants that were low water use. These are also going to be on the entirety of Melrose. Again, these are the trees that we included in the plan. And again, I think we were really going for the continuity of trees, not only on the street, but into this space, because this truly is an extension of the Streetscape project itself, and wanted that continuity and the feel that you're kind of, that nothing has changed, but yet you're wandering into this folly. Some next steps, we're conducting this additional outreach right now. And going back to the City Council in July for authorization to purchase the art itself, so that the city owns the art and then stores it until construction in late 2022. And right now we're also working on the Beverly Bonner Gathering Space concept, and so we're conducting outreach. So look out for that in the near future this summer. And like I said, in August, we'll be undergrounding the utilities on Melrose west of San Vicente, Alma and Lapeer, between Melrose and Santa Monica Boulevard. And then in early 2022, Melrose will start to be under construction for the streetscape. So this is super excited. It's been exciting. It's been a long time in the making. And so, with that, I think we really want to hear from you. There are 34 people here. I see that Dimitri, our city engineer, has his hand raised. Dimitri, did you have anything to add?
Yes, I was hoping to take this opportunity, Rachel, and I'm trying to turn on my camera, but for some reason it's not coming on.
We see
you're able to see me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Good evening, everyone. I'm Dimitri. I'm the city engineer, and I just wanted to thank you for your time this evening. And I wanted to take this opportunity to present Berg and Associates. On the call with us, we have Melanie Nelson, the project engineer for the construction portion of everything that Rachel very eloquently described earlier. Once construction starts, Berg and Associates will be our eyes and ears in the field because this is a very large scale project. So we hired or retained the services of a great consulting firm that has a lot of experience in this field. So we have Melanie Nelson on the call, as well as Janelle Saunders. So Melanie will be the project manager and Janelle will do the outreach portion of the work. I would love for them to introduce themselves and very briefly go over what they will be doing once construction starts. And then if any of you have any questions, myself or Melanie or Janelle will be more than happy to answer them. Melanie, you want to go ahead?
Yes, Dimitri, thank you for such a nice introduction. And it's so wonderful to meet all of you for the first time today. So I'm Melanie Nelson. I'll be the project manager for Berg. And so we will be coming on. We've done a constructability review already. And it will be our job to make sure that the contractor builds everything appropriately to plan. We'll be there for the bidding of the project. We're going to be overseeing the public outreach throughout the duration of the project. We're going to be helping out with letting the public know what's coming in advance so there are no surprises. We're going to be managing a 24-hour helpline, helping with the website updates, construction notices, talking about detours or work that's happening. So everyone is in the know, letting businesses know what's happening. And we have a wonderful public outreach manager, Janelle Saunders, who I'd like to introduce now, and she's going to be our specialist in that.
Hi, thanks, Melanie, and thank you, Dimitri, for the nice introduction, both of you. I am Janelle Saunders, and I'm with Berg & Associates, and Mel kind of covered a lot of what we will be doing with public outreach, but if you call the helpline or reach out through emails, I will be the person that you will contact, and I'm always here and available for to answer any questions, to pass along any information that I can. But yeah, what we really want to do is just keep everybody updated about all of the project progress, make sure things run smoothly and that everybody is always in the know about what's going on.
Thank you so much.
And what was that?
Oh, I said thank you so much.
Oh, yes.
No, I don't mean to cut you off. I do really want to hear from the community.
Yes.
We will continue to keep you in touch with Berg as we move forward. But if you'd like to speak or comment, ask any questions, please raise your hand if you can raise it on the chat, please, so that I can see a line. But Leslie, you know what, go right ahead. You raised your physical hand. You can go right ahead, and I'll follow Leslie with Richard Giesbrecht. You can go ahead and unmute yourselves.
Thank you. I just want to point out that it's already 6:45, and I'm wondering if you're willing to stay here longer so all of our concerns can be addressed.
If people can raise their hands, I can understand how many people would like to speak, and we can allot you time and see how much longer. If you could raise your hand in the chat with, I see three plus Richard and 4.
Anyway,
minutes, I can give you 4 minutes.
My comment is very brief. I think it's a great improvement over what we saw in January 2020. And I love the idea that there are a lot of trees. It seems like there should be more ground landscaping. And my other concern is with the horizontal pieces of the installation. They just look like sleeping benches and will attract, I'm afraid, will attract a homeless.
Leslie, we lost you.
I know, I think I froze.
You're back.
I don't know where I cut out, but my concern is the horizontal aspect of the installation, the horizontal concrete pieces attracting a homeless population. So maybe you can address that.
Sure. So the space, like all other of the city's spaces, is not open 24 hours a day. It will be patrolled. So it's closed at night. And it will be patrolled by both the sheriff and our other patrols that we have in our community spaces on a 24-hour basis. That being said, during the day, a number of people are allowed to use the space, and we're happy to have people interact with the art. But I can tell you that you will not be able to fully lay down on these pieces. They're too narrow, so you might be able to scoot and lean on them, but it would be very, very difficult to balance yourself on them. I could see people sitting down and leaning against them. And again, we want people to interact with that during the day. So we absolutely will have patrols and, definitely a way for all of you to call and keep us in touch if there are any issues as well. Did you have anything else, Leslie, or do you want me to move on to the next person? Thank you. Richard, why don't you go ahead? Followed by Mel Greenwald, followed by Thomas Fleming, followed by Richard Carlos.
Yeah, I've got a question and several comments. First of all, are the bollards at the driveways required?
We wanted to include bollards to ensure safety as well as continuity of the art, but it's definitely something that we're making sure that we have a difference in plane for pedestrians and the vehicles to understand that there's that interaction. There'll also be quite a bit of signage.
Of course, that would be prudent, but I'd like to make the point that using the sections of the columns vertically as bollards, which are service elements, functional elements, detracts and takes away from the art of this art piece. And so perhaps you could consider something very different that doesn't look like anything like the art piece. Perhaps, half spheres or who knows what, but that's your job to figure that out. But I think it's a mistake to use bollards along the driveway. Addressing something I had mentioned earlier, I think the ground cover choices look very, very complicated, and they detract from the art that is actually on the paving. I think simpler ground cover, especially in the color of the ground cover, would help accentuate the art that's being created rather than compete with it. Another point about the ground cover is there doesn't seem to be a compelling reason to absolutely copy the ground cover that is used in the parkways elsewhere on Melrose. This is an art piece. The whole piece is an art piece. It's not an extension of the parkway per se. And so perhaps you and Cayetano Ferrer could sit down and examine, as well as the landscape architect, examine the selection of ground cover and consider accentuating the art piece that's on the ground. I think also that includes maybe too many tree types in the situation, because again, that's starting to compete with the art piece. This parklet is different from everything else, and the trees might accentuate that as well, and at least not compete with what's going on. One other point is just about the design of things. There's a lot of verticals that are experienced, and they're shown in the perspectives you provided us. And it might be worth going back and looking how many vertical things are in place, like the trunks and the trees, and also the light standards that you've got going. So the light standards aren't competing with the trunks of the trees or becoming another structural suggestion of structure competing with the art piece on the ground. I think we should think in terms of simplifying things. With respect to the lighting, too much lighting at the ground plane shooting up into the trees could be blinding to people walking through it, thereby undercutting the whole point of this piece. And maybe the lighting might be reconsidered, putting light up in the trees and not having them on ground, for example. Another question I have is, if we have the crown, the precast crown that Cayetano Ferrer has recovered from the museum as benches, why are we including wire seats, 2 sets, or maybe there's 3 sets of wire seats that compete visually and sculpturally with what's on the ground plane? Do we really need those wire seats there? I don't think we do. If we're required by law to have them, that's one thing. But I think from an artistic standpoint, they compete with what's going on. And those wire seats could be located elsewhere adjacent to the park if someone wants to sit there and look at it. But I think that if you have them in the park competing with the park, that's a problem. Finally, this is addressed to you as representative of the city, Rachel Diamond, but also Dimitri and the support engineers on the staff, that I think that they need to work very closely with Mr. Ferrer about where all the functional elements that relate to this park are positioned. And those should be placed, very carefully placed and considered to be out of view. And I'm talking about things like, where is a 24-inch, 36-inch high landscape irrigation box going to be placed? Are we going to place it right in the middle of a prominent corner or something like that? We don't want that. There's going to be lighting control boxes. Where are those? Are those going to compete with other elements in the ground plane as people approach this art piece? No, we don't want that. They should be located elsewhere, away from the view as one is experiencing this parklet. Where is the street sign going to go? There's limitations of where street signs can go, but there should be consideration made to where that goes. There's going to be other signs, like we have these really dumb signs on our circles. We have on 4 of them, on all these circles in West Hollywood, say, go around the circle, don't drive over the circle. Are we going to have other equally questionable signs like that in this parklet? Another question. The city is always putting.
Sure, I do want to give an opportunity for other.
One more point. Trash cans. Where are trash cans going to be located? And finding a good place for them elsewhere, away from the parklet, might be prudent.
Thank you.
Those are generally my questions now. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We're going to move on to Mel Greenwald, please.
Hi, everybody. Thank you. And I think this is just a wonderful enhancement to the community. I have comments and questions. I think the limited seating that was proposed is a great idea. We don't need to put up sofas for people to hang out on. I have a question about the construction on Melrose Avenue and the utility construction. What street does that begin eastbound, and where does it end westbound? Also, security and sheriff and policing. Because I live in the PDC area, as a homeowner, I've had issues with the sheriffs not responding and the overload of work that they've had. So how is that going to be addressed? And also in the Melrose retail district between La Cienega and I would say San Vicente, well, even up to Robertson, there's been a lot of retail failure. And I think that is due to parking. And I would hate to see this become a failure, because I think it's such a great idea, repurposing the LACMA architectural elements and incorporate them. And, I want this to be a success. And I think parking is another issue that really needs to be addressed, because I live, like I said, in the Pacific Design Center, and I see all these really nice retail establishments where they invest, you know, I'm from this industry. To open a store, it's $2 million for a build out, permits, blah, blah, blah. So, you know, I just want to make sure that, you know, we're servicing the people who are going to make this a success, and security. And again, oh, what was my other thing? I'm sorry. Yeah, the construction on Melrose, where we have to rip it up to make it more, you know, 2021, 2022. And that's it. And I'd love to hear your answers, and I really love this.
Thank you so much. I just want to allow the last person to speak. I'm keeping track of the questions and I'll answer them at the end. So next is Thomas Fleming.
Thank you very much. I agree with all the other comments that were made. My big question is the building that's behind it. Everybody's had a street built or whatever's built, and then as soon as it's finished, they tear it up to do something. If that building's not completed, why even build the park? Because they're going to be all over that area as they're doing the building. I don't know how many years it's been in the process of being built, but it's been at least 3 or 4 years. And oh yeah, they're starting to work on it now, but it's no big deal. You just walk by and they have 2 or 3 guys doing it. Please answer that question, because it makes no sense if that building is not completed. Also, you have no idea what that building is eventually going to be. It could be a nice Starbucks and everybody uses the park area for the eating area. Thank you.
Hi, Thomas. Rachel, I can kind of tackle that one. Obviously, we've been working with the property owner. I know that that property's been under construction for the better part of a half century, but they're moving along quite quickly now. They are getting regular inspections, and our goal is that by the time we start to do the streetscape portion, they will be, if not completed, very close to completed. And we share those concerns that we obviously do not want to in any way damage our project. And that can be said for the entire design district. We're working with all of the major construction projects because, again, we want to do this once. We want to get done. Construction is, it's very disruptive. And we only want to go through areas once. We want to get in, we want to get out, and we want to make sure that we're very coordinated.
Thanks, Oscar. Does anyone else want to speak? Richard Carlos, why don't you go ahead?
Okay, thank you, Rachel and Rebecca and Cayetano, for your presentation and meeting with us. The landscaping indicated in the renderings is lovely, and it's a welcome green space to our neighborhood. But having said that, I think that it was a mistake for the Arts and Cultural Affairs Commission and staff to approve this particular permanent art installation for this gathering space. It's a mistake because it pays homage to an outdated and unremarkable demolished museum facade. I think rather than a permanent installation with large overscale concrete structures, this small green space should host temporary art installations that celebrate and explore the LGBTQ community, artists of color, social justice issues, and a diversity of West Hollywood. The landscaping is beautiful, and with the right art programming, it will provide visitors with an evolving and interesting respite. Thanks.
Thank you, Richard. I just want to go through some of the questions that we heard. Why more seating? This is a really good question. So the art itself is not technically seating. It is art. We imagine people will interact with it, but it's not accessible seating that someone can sit in and easily get up from, in terms of having handles on both sides, which was really requested by the council. And we also wanted individual seats for people to sit in rather than having space to lay down, frankly. I know that has been a concern from the community. So ultimately, we did need additional seating for people to be able to congregate not only on the art, but have a place to sit and contemplate the art. So you'll notice that a lot of the seating is facing towards the art so you can sit and experience it kind of from the edges. Where are the trash cans going? That's a great question. We will have them on the perimeter of the park and in strategic locations that aren't going to impact the art itself or kind of the space, but we want to have enough that people will throw out their trash. Obviously, we're going to have heavy maintenance on this space, but we want people to use the trash can. We'll also have a big belly on this block, which is the compacting container for larger amounts of garbage. One of the questions, or really more of a comment from Richard, was about, where are all the boxes? That's a great question, and it's super important and something we really are always really concerned about. Where are the above ground accesses to all these utilities? As you saw, that's a huge issue. Right now, once we go to council, we will continue to finalize these plans into actual construction drawings, and that's where we'll have some of those final details. And it's absolutely crucial that we don't ruin the art with a million man covers. So we're making sure to locate them in such a way that will, positively impact the space and really blend. A lot of them will be located in the actual parkways adjacent to the street. So directly adjacent to the street, since that's where the utilities were running previously, right under the street. The sheriff's department. So not only will the sheriff's department patrol this space, but we also have our block by block program, and they'll provide security as well. But we want to hear from you too. So if there are concerns and you're not hearing from the sheriff, or you have any concerns about the space itself, you can call the city. You can call City Hall directly. We also have our West Hollywood official app that you can use to register any complaints or any issues regarding the space itself. But we anticipate kind of constant monitoring of this space, particularly at the beginning, to help people understand how to operate. And similar with signage, we anticipate having signage to be able to help people understand the rules of this space. What about the building behind it? That was the last one. I think Oscar answered that. They are working towards completion, and obviously, we want to make sure that we're not ripping up anything twice. Particularly this space. So we are aware of that, and we'll make sure that we're not doing that and coordinating with them. And last, there was one additional question about the location of the utility undergrounding, and that's actually going to occur in August on Melrose, from San Vicente to Doheny. And then after that portion is complete, it'll move on to Almont between Melrose and Santa Monica, and then Lapeer between Melrose and Santa Monica. So those were all the questions. Really appreciate everyone attending. This was a great participation. All of these projects are made better by the community and your input. So we really appreciate it. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me. My phone number is 323-848-6486. It was on the last slide. I can share that with the group. And you're welcome to call or email me at any time, but please also check out our website, weho.org/design district, where you can find more information about not only this specific portion of the project, but the project as a whole. And as our representatives from Berg said, you'll be hearing from them shortly as well with more news on construction. So thank you so much again, and everyone take care.